the first thing that I wanted to talk about was like monogamy, porn, and the natural being of man. Like, so like what I mean by that, it was in that episode they talked about like how in the Western world, like monogamy seems to be preached and praised but not practiced. And then in his world, like the Eastern world, like in Islam, you can have multiple wives. And when I thought about it, I was like, dang, okay, well, Andrew Tate makes a bunch of good points because he's saying like, you know, when you are in a monogamous relationship, you do things in the dark that essentially are not monogamous, i.e., like watching porn or getting prostitutes and stuff like that. So you're already trying to be, what's the opposite of monogamous?
Like polyamorous?
Yeah, polyamorous, right? And I thought that was interesting because he's like, oh, well, if you're in a polygamous relationship, then you're doing the natural state of what a man should be.
Right.
Like, what do you think of that? Like, did you understand his take? Did you agree with him or disagree with him?
I know it's lame, but there's truth to it. There's some truth to it, I think. But I guess I don't also agree that just makes it right either. In the sense of, I think for me, I go like, yeah, I understand what he's saying. I understand the connection. I do think it's different. That's not me excusing any of the other.
You think what's different?
I think having multiple spouses is different to some extent than what he was, than like the porn and stuff like that. But that's not excusing any of that behavior. I think it's more comes down to like, you should just be restricting yourself, period. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying that people aren't going to mess up or like have mistakes or things like that. But I think for me, and I would agree with kind of more of the take that George Janko had, which is, as a Christian, I would say like it is a discipline that I follow, that I would just restrict myself from that behavior and be just in love and show love to that one person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, it's like you're saying, like I agree with what he's saying, like the natural state of how a man should be, but the discipline that I'm choosing through my faith is to be monogamous.
Right.
Because when I was listening to it, I was like, yeah, I agree with him. It's like is the natural state of being a man to be polygamous? Well, polygamous is the practice, I guess, to like want multiple.
See, but that's it. It's want. I think the natural state is to want it, but it doesn't mean you need it.
Have you ever thought about like how in like animals, they get to be in like polygamous relationships? Like they're not dedicated to one other.
No, I haven't thought about that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's true.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
But this is where the conversation gets interesting to me, because like I've thought about that before. Like we're the only, and Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, like we're the only mammals who essentially force ourselves to be with one other person, like that polygamy. But that monogamy. But when you think about polygamy, it's like, well, will we just be following animal
instincts?
But here's the thing: when you put the faith component into it, like we are made in God's image. You know what I mean? So that's where it becomes super interesting to me when you throw in God to like this like animalistic nature that we have. That's what makes us so different. And that's when I think about the Bible and like how we're made in God's image. And if you're a Christian, how you have the Holy Spirit, et cetera, well, that's what makes, I mean, I guess I would argue that it makes life like, I wouldn't say more free, but I believe that religion gives you structure.
Yeah.
And I think as human beings, we need structure. Like we thrive off of structure. We can achieve things with structure. Like when you don't have structure, I think it's really hard to live, because it's easy to, I would say, do bad things and to really be lost.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So.
But see, that's the thing too that I disagree with is, I feel like he's, in that podcast, they're making the assumption that like, well, if you have multiple wives, it all stops. Like, but my question is like, at what point? At 2 wives? At 5 wives? Are you gonna get bored of them? Are you gonna try a different one? I mean, that's where like, he's basically saying like, well, that it's just better to do that than being in the darkness of like watching porn or whatever that may be. And I guess for me, I go like, again, I don't think that that's good either. But like, who
So you
says
think it's
that,
less harmful or something?
no, I think it's like it's all bad. You know, like it's all
Yeah.
like a bad thing. Like I think he thinks like there's like a
brighter side to it or
yeah,
something?
like, oh
Yeah.
well, if you have like 3 wives, then like you won't have, curiosity, or you won't have this need that you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
fulfilling. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yeah.
when does that ever happen?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That never happens.
Right.
Like you always are looking for more, and like you always get bored of stuff. Like
Right.
you always get bored of something.
Yeah,
You
that's
always want
m-
something new.
yeah.
That's why like when you see like these guys who like, I mean, I guess I'm gonna just say it like Gary Vee, for example. Like at some point when you are with somebody for a long time and you get older and you have status, you can get somebody who's younger, right? So you want something new. You know what I'm saying? That's no knock to him. You know what I'm saying? That's no knock to anybody who does that. But I think the human condition is to always replace something that's old, right? And that's why, even for me, like with my routines and stuff, it's like, okay, I'm gonna throw something a little different in my routine because I'm doing the same thing every day.
Right.
That's how I even came up with the morning checklist, because I realized that routines get boring, but if I make a checklist on the things that I actually want to get better at and make a habit of, then it doesn't get boring because there's a mark of measurement for me at some point. Like, I've been getting up and writing in the morning every day. I see myself getting better writing, right? Like I see myself choosing my words carefully. So I think, again, we're talking about like the natural state of man and like polygamy and monogamy, but really what I'm discovering just even talking to is like we all get bored of the same thing, and you are going to want more of that thing over time.
100%.
Yeah.
And I guess then what would you say you got to do to not let that happen?
I don't think you can really stop it. Like, I think like, I mean,
Like, I think the common thing is to be like, that's the value of like dating or something like that. Like date even when you're married, because you're throwing something you're changing things up in like a daily.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit.
No, I know.
We
That's what I'm
talked about
asking.
this. Yeah. Like,
but I don't feel like we necessarily have discussed it in further detail.
yeah. So we were talking about, what was the word? You used that word. And I was like, so like enamored by it. It started with an N. I do remember that.
Novelty.
Novelty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like having novelty. So I think when you do throw novelty into things, it keeps the same thing interesting.
Yeah.
And you can discover new things about that thing, right? So if I'm doing, when I was playing football, if I did a drill, if I put an extra cone in the drill, it made the drill harder. And I feel like I'm getting a new skill from adding something into the drill.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we were talking about in the car on the way back from the cabin, it was like, all right, well, like the example you gave with your wife is like, hey, I don't want to change this date or something like that to my birthday because that's like expected. Let's throw a little like flair here and like make it new by making it spontaneous. Because we were saying like spontaneity, I don't think we were saying isn't real, but we were saying it's hard to achieve. But novelty is easy to plan, which makes spontaneity happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, that was kind of a bar, dog. I ain't gonna cap. That was kind of a bar. So yeah, we're kind of going all over the place. But yeah, I think that like at the end of the day, like that, I do believe that that is a natural state of being a man, but I also think it's a natural state of being a human. And depending on what your faith is and your morals and your goals, really with your relationships, you can choose what you want. But that whole putting an end to that addiction or need, it's not going to end.
Yeah.
Like it's always going to be there.
Correct.
Yeah.